afternoon to you. In America today, as the president gets ready to thank those first responders to the failed Times Square terror attack, you and I are now seeing new arrests and new outrage over the terror fight in arguably the most vulnerable place of all, right here in New York City. President Obama in the air as we speak, stopping soon in Manhattan to provide his personal congratulations to members of the NYPD who jumped into action in the moments after that smoking Nissan Pathfinder was first reported on 45th Street. But what should be a big photo op instead has become a big cloud, in that the Department of Homeland Security, turns out, is slashing anti-terror funding to the Big Apple by nearly a quarter this year. The White House has been quick to point out that that number does not include more than $100 million coming to the city through the Stimulus Act. The Stimulus Act, by the way, we were told was to create job growth in our country, not fund the counterterrorism budget cuts. New York, all in, good for $245 million when you add it up, which is an increase of 24% from the Bush administration. But that is not nearly enough for members of the New York delegation in D.C. on either side of the aisle, including Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner, who let the House have it, or the White House, I should say, have it, during a House hearing today.
Some of the funding decisions made by this administration have been mind-numbingly, insanely wrong.
Proof of how important that funding is: the money trail from the Times Square bomber taking the feds today through 3 different northeastern states. That costs money. Video from just outside of Boston showing police cordoning off a small home. Similar raids taking place on Long Island and in New Jersey. Set all politics aside. Even the funding that New York City gets, or even the overall U.S. funding for counterterrorism, is a true drop in the bucket when you compare it to what we, you and I, through our government, are spending perpetrating war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and have been for years. In fact, for the first time ever, spending in Afghanistan has now topped the cost of the Iraq war by more than $1 billion. Let me emphasize, in the Middle East, it is billions. In America, we talk about millions, and those billions are for a single month. Let me put it in perspective for you. While you and I continue to dump literally wheelbarrows of our tax money overseas, an increase of $429 billion in money spent, our money, since 9/11 fighting there, in what I believe is a failed let's fight them over there strategy. So we take all of our tax, remember the same way we gave some of the banksters, don't we print it, it's fine. We dump the money in the Middle East, that's a good time, there, you enjoy that. Bribe some people. Meanwhile, back here in America, New York City, where we know they just put a car bomb in. They already blew up the World Trade Center. Washington, D.C., they already hit the Pentagon. We know that. We know that they would like to hit all sorts of places here. Well, for that, pocket change. As a percentage of what we spend there, what we spend here is a joke. I said $429 billion since 9/11 there. $30 billion total on America since 9/11. That means we have spent 14 of your dollars fighting war there for every dollar that we've spent here. And that assigns no value to the human cost that continues to be extracted every day by those wars. Joining us now from Capitol Hill, New Jersey, Congressman Bill Pascrell, a Democrat on the Homeland Security Committee, and Michael Balboni, former direct Deputy Public Safety Secretary for New York State. Representative Pascrell, how fragile at this point is the fight them there philosophy relative to the funding we're getting here?
Well, I believe that, Dylan, good afternoon. I believe that the administration is doing the best that it can, and the money is there. There's no question about it. Because of the recovery money, which was a one-shot deal last February, those dollars should have been cut. I've been on this Homeland Security Committee since the very beginning, along with Peter King. We're not going to let anybody within the metropolitan area. You mentioned the Recovery Act before, Dylan. You should know that saved or created the jobs of almost 5,000 police officers.
No, I do.
They are front line.
Yeah, can I interrupt you there?
Yes, sir.
I guess when I look at that, and I understand that, and I see the massive extraction perpetrated against our country by the banks that caused the need for what you guys call the Stimulus Act, I call it the Cover-Up Act, and all these state budget shortfalls as a result of the bank scam, and then you tell me you're creating jobs when what you're really doing is using our tax money to fill in the hole to keep police and hospitals operating that would otherwise be put out of business because of what the banks did. But quite honestly, I feel like we're completely off topic. The question I have is...
Don't get me in the position of defending the banks or Wall Street. That's not my position,
well, yeah,
by the way.
If you're defending the stimulus, anyway, let's discuss the issue.
I am defending the stimulus. Yes, I am. That I am doing.
All right, well, the stimulus to me is a cover-up for what the banks did. So, by definition, defending the stimulus...
But what would have been the result? What would have been the result if we didn't have the recovery package? 5,000 less police officers.
Of course.
That's just one area. That's just one area.
No, I get it. And listen, that's why the banks have incredible leverage to get whatever they want out of us, because threatening to take away the police is a great way to continue an ongoing extraction. But the question that I have...
And that's why we need financial reform.
And
no
yet
question
we're not
about
getting it. And yet we still have too big to fail banks. Listen, I want...
We voted for it in the House, Dylan. You know that. We voted for it.
I know that you voted for some of it. But again, I want to stick on the security conversation if I can, because I actually think, and I want to get you into the conversation. You're standing right next to me tolerating this. $14 spent over there. Yep. $1 spent here. We know for a fact, I know for a fact that they would like to kill me and every other of the millions of us that go through this on a random basis. This is a known fact. They've tried to kill us. They'll try to kill us again. And yet we spend pennies here and spend billions there. We know that 1 out of every 3 people killed by a Predator drone is a civilian, not an enemy combatant. Is there a number that is bigger than the number that we currently have that would actually create security here, as opposed to indulging a yippee-ki-yay instinct to go kick some ass elsewhere that may or may not actually be helping us? Is that a knowable number?
Dylan, your point is right on, because what we're talking about here, particularly if you go from New York City and you work out. New York City, if you talked about maybe $500 million to $1 billion, you could do a lot more with the Lower Manhattan Security Initiative, which is, cameras and license plate readers downtown, moving it to the Midtown. You could do more with the Secure the City program, which is a ringed effort to make sure you can get after nuke and rad before it gets here.
These are basically surveillance trucks that sweep for radioactive activity on anything.
You have all different choke points in the city itself. And that's in the city.
Do we not have that right now?
We are working on it.
But do we have that today?
No, it's being developed. We have pieces of it, but it needs to. We fight every year over a $40 million appropriation from the Congress to keep that program going, and yet it involves thousands of police officers who need to be trained and new technology and new equipment, and yet that's always the fight. Nationally, if you did maybe $5 billion, $10 billion, you're talking about a very good capability across the nation.
So basically, the amount of money that we spend in a single month at war in Afghanistan, $6 billion.
It's a game changer here.
A single month's budget in Afghanistan is a national revolution in terms of our domestic security.
It is indeed.
Do we talk about that, Representative Pascrell?
Yes, we do. In fact, we've been fighting since I've been on, and Peter King has been on since the very beginning of the Homeland Security, to make all dollars dependent upon risk factors. We've come a long way in the past 3 years to move all of those dollars to risk. New York metropolitan area, New Jersey, Connecticut are getting what they believe, we believe, are the money needed to do what we have to do. Do we need more money? No one fights for more money than Peter King and myself. I'm dealing to the direct situation. Mike knows darn well that it's now related to risk rather than every state getting X amount of dollars. We've come a long way. $54 billion is now the total budget of Homeland Security. That's increased tremendously in the Obama administration, and we're going to continue to go that way. There are a lot of needs. Much of our communication system is inoperable. We need to deal with the communication system, which we know needs a lot of push and a lot of creativity. Those things need to be done. It's going to cost a lot of money. We're going to provide the money. Count on it.
I guess my question is, since we all know we don't have any money and we're running a deficit existence, we know we're spending $429 billion in Afghanistan, $6 billion a month in Afghanistan, $5 billion a month in Iraq. We know we're spending pennies by comparison here. We know there's a list of things that we could have. You just listed a bunch of them yourself. Why not pay for the investment in our domestic security, although it's incomprehensible to me that 10 years after 9/11 we're even having this conversation, and cut the war money in Afghanistan, which it's unclear why we're even in Afghanistan.
Dylan, we're down to 60,000 troops in Iraq. We are on schedule to move our combat troops out. Afghanistan was a disaster from the beginning. That's where our concentration should have been. Many of us did say that in the past administration. They weren't listening. So now we've had to devote a lot of money into Afghanistan. We just cannot leave it as we did early on when we pushed the Russians out.
Why not?
Well, because there are many things at stake there.
Which are, for instance?
That country needs our help now so it can stand on its own 2 feet.
Aren't there a lot of countries like that? Aren't there a lot of countries in the world that need nation building other than Afghanistan?
No, the people who attacked us were trained there. The people who attacked us, came from Afghanistan. That should have been, that's the epicenter of the terrorist movement against this country on that border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. That's where our concentration is right now. We need to not only deal with intelligence over there, we need to have combat troops on the ground. They're doing a fantastic job, and we hope someday shortly we'll be able to remove some of them. And you're absolutely right. We need to protect America at the same time that we're sending our bravest over to other countries. But I'll tell you one thing, those cops on the beat did the job a few weeks ago, and we should be very, very thankful. God knows if they might not have been there if the stimulus package was not back. That's only one part of that stimulus package, Dylan.
Yeah.
And I understand your point. It's well taken. It's presented in good faith. I would rather us be spending the money here than over there. But we do have responsibilities and obligations. We put ourselves into this mess. But on the other hand, the very terrorists who came to attack us came from that part of the world.
Understood. But if we know where they're headed, if I know you're coming to get me, I know you're coming to Times Square. I used to host a TV show in Times Square. I can tell you right now, they would like to come to Times Square and deliver a bomb there.
Well,
why don't we just defend Times? Mike, if you were to create a list, a Fantasyland list for a place like New York, what would we have in this city that we don't have right now?
Well, the Congressman mentioned a very important piece, and that's the communications, the interoperability. And that's not just within one finite part.
And we don't have that right now?
It's fits and starts. New York City has really done a great job, but again, it's always about new technology, but also about being able to talk to the right people at the right time, with the right information. That's training. That's intelligence. One of the things that the Congressman acknowledges and has been, frankly, in the forefront of us is the intelligence effort here domestically. Now, how do we get the information from around the world to the people who need it real time right now? That takes training. That takes all of the agencies working together. But when you get to actual expenditure of money, it talks about also sustaining your effort. And that becomes so difficult when you face all the deficits you have. Ray Kelly and Mike Bloomberg faced a very difficult choice. As crime continues to rise in a lot of our urban centers, you're given this Hobson's choice. Do you spend money to go do the general day-to-day police work that everybody comes to expect and protect you?
Sure. Or
do you keep the counterterrorism focus? And sometimes to make that choice, it's a very difficult choice. And that's why your concept of taking some of the money, not an either or, but taking some of the money you spend and bringing it here and using it focused and developing capabilities, I think is really the way to go. And I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. It's just a question of how do you get the national will to do that.
It's our priorities, Dylan. That's the main thing. When everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. You know that better than I do.
Yep.
And the fact is, we need to understand that whether it's port security, whether it's protecting mass transportation, the buses, the trains, we've added money to what was a budget that was becoming robust. We never spend enough money to defend our neighborhoods and our own families. We know that, and we're doing the best that we can within the culture, within the money that we do have. We cannot go to the point of saying that everything is a priority. To me, Homeland Security is the top priority. I'm going to do everything I can personally. And I know I can't speak for Peter King, but I think he feels the same way as I do about this. We're going to make sure that the New York metropolitan area, look, the most dangerous 2 miles in the whole country is the 2 miles on the New Jersey Turnpike that run through all of those chemical companies. It is a dangerous situation. We passed chemical legislation. Peter and I are working on weapons of mass destruction legislation, which has kind of been ignored in the 9/11 Commission. We know what our responsibilities are. We're going to address them, and we're going to find the money to do it.
Listen, the better the prioritization is, the more effective the money spent is, the happier I think the Americans who pay their taxes every day become. I thank both of you for the conversation. Coming up here, thanks, guys. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Congressman.